Hello and welcome back to Silver Griffin Makes a Thing, where we make whatever we feel like at the moment. Today I've got another custom doll video for you all. This time we're doing a Selkie. Selkies are creatures from Irish and Scottish folklore, with folkloric cousins appearing in the mythologies of various Scandinavian countries. They traditionally appear as beautiful men or women who don their magic seal skins and turn into seals, and the most common tales about them center around a man who discovers a beautiful maiden on the shore, steals her sealskin, and forces her to become his bride. The Selkie maid spends most of her time longing to return home, and the tales commonly end with the Selkie stealing her skin back and escaping to the sea. I love seals. I love Selkies. Therefore, I must make a Selkie doll. I'm putting a bit of a twist on the classic Selkie, though. She's going to draw inspiration from the Saimaa Ringed Seal, a species of freshwater seal that only lives in Finland's Lake Saimaa. They're extremely endangered, one of my two favorite species of true seals, and they are just, they're so cute! Look at these round blorbs. Look at them! I'd like to thank my friend Anna for her help consulting on this project and her enthusiastic enabling of my seal habit. She's from Finland and has actually occasionally been known to send me Saimaa Ringed Seal themed goodies. As a base for this doll, I'll be using Rochelle Goyle from the Monster High line for her speckled gray skin and her face sculpt, which features huge round eyes perfect for a seal girl. There's just one problem. Hands. Nope, Rochelle's clawed hands will not do for this project, so we need a bit of help. Laguna Blue is a pretty common doll, so I don't feel at all bad about stealing her perfectly webbed hands to make this Selkie. Let's get started. I'm just gonna yoink! Perfect. Rochelle's hand and outfit pieces will return to my stock box to await use in some other project. Laguna's hands already make her look a lot more like what I'm going for. It's a good start, but this mane of pink hair and Rochelle's gargoyle ears don't match at all. These will all have to go. Let's start with the prep work. A dunk in boiling water will soften the vinyl of the head and make it much easier to remove. Also, if you couldn't tell, why yes, I am a Ravenclaw. I don't think this is what Sebastian meant by under the sea. Once the head has had a nice soak, protect your hand with a dish towel, preferably one whose sail helps support Saimaa Ringed Seal conservation efforts, and gently pull the head off. I haven't had a damaged neck peg yet, and honestly, I don't know how I would fix it if I wound up with one at this point. Time for tea! Now the real prep begins. See this pink hair? It's coming off. All of it. I chop it short with scissors, then scrape out the plugs with some pliers. I really struggled with removing the plugs around the part line. They just didn't want to come out for some reason. A bit of acetone cleans off that factory paint quite nicely, and an X-Acto knife takes off the ears. I also used acetone to clean the paint off the Laguna hands, which are made with a transparent blue plastic. You have to be really careful when using acetone on this plastic part because it can and will melt it. Luckily, I didn't have any issues with the hands this time. It looks like the vinyl yellowed a bit, but that's okay, I can work with this. I mix up some Apoxie Sculpt and use it to fill in the holes in her back where her wings once were. Next comes the ears. I'm also using Apoxie Sculpt for these. Unlike Puck's ears, the epoxy just wasn't sticking to the sides of her head. Maybe it's because there was nothing for it really to grab onto. I sculpted Puck's ears right on top of that doll's existing ears, but Rochelle's were on top of her head rather than in the usual place. That problem is easily fixed with some armature wire. I just jab the pointy ends of a loop of wire through the vinyl, twist them together on the inside, and voila! Instant framework. The ears come together very nicely after that. True seals, including the Saimaa Ringed Seal, do not have external ear flaps. Sea lions, on the other hand, do. I decided to give her sea lion ears, which are sort of flattened tubes in shape. Sure, I could have just skipped the ears entirely, but no, she needed cute little sea lion ears. With the leftover Epoxy Sculpt, I make a couple of little seashells. I thought at the time I might use them as props or decorations or something, but I ended up not going with that idea. They'll be stashed for later use. Maybe one of these days I'll make a mermaid or something. I give the modifications about 24 hours to cure. While the epoxy is gray, it's not the same shade as the doll, so I start off by painting the head, back, and hands a gray meant to match the original skin tone. At this point, I really was trying to keep her natural speckled coloration, which was the whole reason I went with a Rochelle Goyle instead of a Laguna Blue doll in the first place. Once the paint is dry and I've dabbed on a layer of diluted Liquitex matte medium, I start blushing the body and head. Starting off with a coat of the matte medium seems to help the pastels and colored pencils stick a little better than they do on bare plastic, but it's definitely not as good as Mr. Super Clear. Soon. I stick to warm grays for the blushing, just adding a bit of definition to the face and body. I use a soft pink for the lips and blue for the eyeshadow. I wanted to have a pretty soft, muted color palette, sticking mainly to grays and some brown outside of those accents. While the sealing layers of matte medium are drying, I switch gears and move on to the accessory that is really the defining feature of a Selkie, her sealskin coat. And let me tell you, I am so proud of this sealskin. Using Moonlight Jewel's pattern for a teddy bear hood as a starting point, I used a short gray plush and a slightly darker gray flannel to create a long coat in the shape of an actual sealskin. I then used chalk pastels to create the distinctive ring splotches that Saimaa Ringed Seals have, and used a small iron to set the pastels in place. Lastly, I embroidered facial features and flipper details. I love this sealskin. It even has little pockets for the doll to slip her hands into, as Cleo here demonstrates. It's cute and splotchy and fits like I want, and it's just the right color to go on my Selkie. The one downside? Plush fluff. Plush fluff everywhere! After a change of leggings, it's time to continue the splotchy theme onto the body. I'm giving my Selkie ringed blotches on her face and body as well as her coat. I start by using watercolored pencils, but alas, they weren't sticking like I wanted and I wasn't feeling like building up to it over the course of half a dozen layers. What can I say, I'm kind of impatient. The pencils at least served to give me a base to work from, and I had more luck with them on the vinyl head than the plastic body. So at this point I switched to continuing the face-up, using the pencils to lay out her eyes and markings. I give her big, round, dark eyes like those of a seal, and after laying out some more blotches on her forehead, I give her loads of freckles. I feel like a spotty Selkie girl should have lots of freckles. She also gets a cute little seal nose. Here she is after I finished with the watercolor pencils. I love her eyes and her soft, fluffy lashes. And then I realized I didn't like the blotches. They weren't correct. Saimaa Ringed Seals don't have centers to their rings that are darker than their base color. So, yeah. To fix this, I mix up a shade of gray that's about the color of her skin and sponge it on over everywhere I'd given her blotches. Fixing the ones on her forehead was kind of terrifying because I really loved her face up aside from the rings and I didn't want to ruin it. Then I go back and redo her rings. Which I also didn't like, so I paint over them again. While I'm at it, I make her back, sides, and upper limbs a bit darker, since seals tend to be a bit lighter on the underside than on the top. Third time proves to be the charm. I'm still not sure they're quite right, but I'm a lot happier with these results, and I didn't want to paint her all over for a fourth time, because sooner or later that paint would just start peeling off the plastic, especially around the joints. Art is just like that sometimes. You can use references all you like, but sometimes you just mess up and have to try again. But one part I didn't mess up was the lower half of her face. I redid her forehead blotches, then just get to work enhancing my pencil job with acrylic paints. I use a very warm brown for the base color of her irises and darken it up from there to give them that rich, almost liquid appearance. Once the base color is dry, I take darker browns and shade them with ultramarine blue rather than black. Adding black to darken your colors also really reduces the vibrancy and tends to make them look kind of flat, so it's usually better to shade or darken with a color rather than black itself. I add more ultramarine blue to darken the brown even further so I can add some shading to the irises, then use a lighter warm brown to bring the highlights back in. I tend to paint a lot like this, pushing and pulling shadows and light until I get something I'm happy with. Big dark pupils add to the soft and sweet expression, as do fluffy eyelashes. Unlike Puck's face-up, which was supposed to be sly and mischievous, I want my Selkie to look sweet and innocent. At some point, I must have gotten some dust or something stuck in the varnish on her chin, so I use a bit of paint to help tone down that kind of grimy look. The rest of her facial details get picked out and strengthened with paint, and then, oh yeah, you know what time it is. Interference pigment time! I swear, I will find a way to use these in every painted project I do. Watch me. I love her. At the last minute, I add some freckles to her chest and shoulders to reinforce the motif. Her eyes and lips get a nice coat of Liquitex gloss varnish and her face up is done. Time for reassembly. A bit of hot air from a hairdryer softens the neck hole enough to get her head back on without cracking anything. I didn't get footage from the last couple of phases of this project, just photos. So here's what I did. For her hair, I made yarn wefts out of an acrylic yarn that shades from charcoal gray to silver to white, brushing them out with a pet brush, gluing them with Elmer's glue-all, and flattening them with a hair straightener. Then I curled each weft by wrapping it around a metal chopstick and heating it with a hair straightener. Once I had a nice selection of wefts, I glued them to her scalp, starting from the hairline and working my way in. The result is this sort of wild mass of untamed curls that I think is perfect for our seal maiden. Then I make another little misstep. But I want to show you what I did with this one because, wow, I really decided to commit to sparkle motion here. I wanted to make a sort of sash or belt or something that looked kind of like seaweed, thinking I could use it to maybe tie her seal skin in place. So naturally, I did what any other crafter who's dabbled in half a dozen fiber arts and the SCA would do. I improvised a backstrap loom and wove it, using brown acrylic yarn as my warp and a multicolored green yarn for my weft and an acrylic rod from a broken doll stand as my shuttle. You know, like any perfectly sane and ordinary crafter. So yeah, I did that. It took me about 3 hours to put it together and weave this thing because I am an absolute madwoman. I actually don't hate the result either. I just decided that this chunky scarf thing I created on a whim was not going to serve my needs. Oh well, one more prop for the stock box. I went with this instead. This is literally just a piece of shiny, dark brown, wired ribbon twisted about her to create a little bikini top and loincloth sort of thing. It's got a couple of stitches at the hip to keep it in place, but other than that, yeah, that's it. It's just a piece of ribbon. And it looks great. Like, I can't believe how good this looks. Art is weird sometimes. Last thing is to give her her sealskin so she can return to the sea at any time she pleases. I'm calling her Vaahto, which is a Finnish word that means foam. According to Anna, it refers to the kind of white foam you get on top of waves. I think it's a beautiful name for a beautiful selkie. Thank you for joining me for this video. As usual, there will be a list of materials in my description box, as well as a link to my Instagram. If you're interested in learning more about the Saimaa Ringed Seal or Saimaa Ringed Seal conservation efforts, there will be some links below as well. The World Wildlife Foundation even runs a page with the Wildlife Cam where you can watch them basking in the sun. If you can, maybe consider donating. Every little bit helps to preserve these truly unique and iconic animals. This is the last video I filmed while we were still living at our old apartment. At the time of editing, we're at the new house and I'm working on getting my new workspace set up. Hopefully I'll be able to get back into doll making here soon because I have a truly delightful project planned. To make sure you don't miss out on the upcoming fun, leave a like and a comment and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Join me next time on Silver Griffin Makes a Thing, where we make whatever we feel like at the moment.